Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a subject today that, well, let's just say it's not your typical dinner table conversation. We're talking about sex with spirits.
Ooh, spicy.
You can say that. And, you gave me some really interesting sources for this deep dive. Ancient shamanic practices, modern magical grimoires, even some Aleister Crowley. It's quite a mix.
Yeah, it really runs the gamut.
It does.
Yeah.
So I guess our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to unpack this whole spirit sex thing, figure out what it really is, how it's been practiced throughout history across cultures, and what it has to do with alchemy.
Sounds like a plan. And, one of the things that really strikes me is how prevalent this idea of spirit sex is. You find it in cultures all over the world throughout history.
Right. It's not just some fringe belief.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if there's something more to it than just, fantasy or wishful thinking.
I'm with you on that. And, when you look at some of these traditions, it's not just about like a quick fling with a spirit. We're talking committed relationships here. Like in Siberia, where shamans have these lifelong sexual relationships with spirits called ayami. It's like a spiritual marriage.
And these ayamis, they weren't just like companions, they were powerful allies. They provided the shaman with knowledge, power, all sorts of things.
Wow, so a spirit spouse who's also your mentor.
Yeah.
Talk about a power couple. And it's not just the shamans either.
Yeah.
Right? Ordinary people in Siberian culture also reported having these relationships with spirits.
Yeah, it wasn't limited to just the spiritual elite.
It makes you wonder what those experiences must have been like, right? To have a spirit lover.
Uh.
And it wasn't just Siberia. Think about King Numa of Rome.
Yeah.
He was said to be married to the nymph, what was her name? Egeria, right?
Egeria, yeah.
And she taught him all about laws and rituals. She was his advisor, basically.
It's interesting how that idea of a spirit lover offering knowledge appears in the myth of Psyche and Cupid, too. Remember how she wasn't allowed to see her divine husband?
Oh, right. There's definitely a theme here with this invisibility, right? The unseen lover.
It makes you think about all those stories of fairies, too. All those amorous encounters with humans.
Right. It blurs the line between myth and reality. I mean, were these just stories or was something else going on?
And that line gets even blurrier when we get to the medieval period. That's when we start seeing those ideas about incubi and succubi.
Oh, yeah, the demons.
Yeah, the ones who supposedly preyed on humans sexually.
Cue the scary music.
It was the era of witch hunts, accusations of people making deals with the devil. It got pretty dark.
It did. But even then, not everyone saw these spirits as purely evil, right?
Right. There was this demonologist, Ludovico Sinistrari. He argued that incubi and succubi weren't demons at all, but a separate category of spirits altogether.
Interesting. And he even questioned whether spirit sex was a sin if the spirits themselves were willing participants.
Yeah, it raises all these questions about free will and consent, even in the spirit world.
It does.
Okay.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a minute. What about Hindu Tantra? You've got this idea of Shakti, this incredible creative energy, often personified as a goddess.
Shakti's amazing. It's not just some static force, It can manifest in all sorts of ways.
Right, including potentially through these spirit lovers, right?
Possibly, yeah. And then you have the left-hand path of Tantra, where sexual union, in all its forms, can be used for spiritual evolution.
But using these practices for personal power or just for pleasure, that's a no-no, right?
Big no-no. It's all about spiritual growth.
So we've gone from Siberian shamans to ancient Roman kings to fairies and demons, and now Tantra. It seems like this idea of spirit sex is a lot more widespread and complex than most people think.
It really is, and we've only just scratched the surface.
I know. So let's get into the how-tos, the nuts and bolts of it all. You brought some sources that talk about the alchemy of sex. How does all of this connect to spirit sex?
Oh, we're going to get into all of that. The alchemical wedding, the philosopher's stone, even the homunculus.
Ooh, stay tuned, everyone. This is where it gets really good. Okay, so alchemy. Where do we even begin? It can be kind of a confusing subject.
It can be, yeah. All those symbols and strange words,
Right, like a secret code or something. So, what's it really all about?
Well, at its heart, it's all about transformation. Taking something, something ordinary and turning it into something extraordinary, like lead into gold.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that. The alchemist's dream, right?
Exactly. So you've got this concept of transmutation, right? But there's also this idea of the alchemical wedding.
Ooh, the alchemical wedding. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's all about the union of opposites. The sun and the moon, masculine and feminine. And when those two forces come together, they create something new, something powerful.
Like the Philosopher's Stone.
Exactly.
And alchemists believed that the Philosopher's Stone could, Like transform the physical world, right?
Yeah, it was believed to have some pretty amazing properties. And it's not the only powerful thing in alchemy. There's also the elixir of life, which was said to be able to, like, perfect the human being, body
Wow.
and soul.
Wow, perfecting the human. That's a pretty lofty goal.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got transmutation, the elixir of life, and then, of course, there's the homunculus.
Ah, yes. The homunculus.
So is it a real being, or is it just a symbol?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? It's something that alchemists have debated for centuries. Some alchemists believe that a homunculus could actually be created, using certain biological ingredients in a very controlled environment.
So like a real living being.
That's the idea. One alchemist who believed this was Paracelsus.
Paracelsus, okay. So in a way, it's kind of like that idea of the golem in
Yeah.
Jewish folklore, right?
Yeah.
That being created out of clay
Hmm.
and then animated by, like, sacred words.
That's a great parallel. And what's so fascinating is that both the homunculus and the golem, they kind of blur the lines between, the physical and the spiritual, kind of like what we've been talking about with spirit sex, right?
Right. So are we talking about the possibility of, like, a child being born from a human and a spirit?
That's exactly what we're talking about. And Aleister Crowley took this idea even further in his novel Moonchild.
Moonchild. Okay.
Yeah, he actually wrote about using magical practices to attract a specific spirit into a developing fetus. So it's like, creating a being with specific qualities that you want.
Like a spiritual designer baby.
Yeah, you could say that. He even gave instructions on, how to time the birth using the lunar cycles to, like, maximize the child's astrological power.
Wow. So we're not just talking about spirit sex here. We're talking about spirit babies.
We are. It gets pretty wild.
It does. And speaking of things that are powerful and sometimes a little taboo, we have to talk about how different cultures throughout history have viewed bodily fluids.
Ooh,
Semen, menstrual blood, lubricating oils, they've all been seen as both powerful and dangerous.
it's a real paradox, isn't it? These are substances that are essential for creation, for life, but yet there are often these very strict rules surrounding them. Like, in Jewish law, there are all these detailed instructions about how to handle menstrual blood.
Right. It's almost like it's this powerful force that has to be treated with a lot of respect.
Exactly. And this idea connects back to alchemy, too. Alchemists used these substances in their work, especially in creating the homunculus. It's all about, using potent ingredients from the natural world to create something entirely new.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like a recipe. But instead of baking a cake, you're creating life.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about those alchemical principles again. Salt, sulfur, and mercury. How do those connect to all of this?
Great question. So each of these principles is associated with certain aspects of the human body. Salt often represents the physical body, sulfur the soul, and mercury the spirit.
Okay, I'm following you.
So when you think about it in those terms, it makes sense that each of the body's fluids would be connected to one of these principles, right?
So like menstrual blood might be associated with salt, semen with sulfur, and lubricating oils with mercury.
Exactly.
Wow. I'm really starting to get how the physical and spiritual are all intertwined in alchemy. Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this and thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but how do I actually experience this whole spirit lover thing for myself? Where would they even begin?
Well, the first step would be choosing a spirit whose energy and attributes, align with your goals. So if you're looking for a connection based on love and sexuality, you'd want to choose a spirit that's associated with those energies.
Okay, so choose wisely.
Right.
Right. But how do you go about finding the right spirit? It's not like you could just, like, swipe right on a spirit dating app.
Huh. That would be interesting. No, there are different methods for choosing and invoking a spirit. One approach is called the talismanic method. Basically, you create an image of the spirit based on the letters of its name and what those letters mean in the occult.
Okay, so it's like you're a spiritual detective.
Right, exactly. And by piecing all of those clues together, you start to build this visual representation of the spirit's, appearance and personality.
Wow, I like it. So you've chosen your spirit, you've got an image of it. What's next?
Well, then you need to create a special space for the spirit, kind of like an altar or a shrine. Make it a place that you find visually appealing and that you can imbue with specific energies to attract the spirit.
Okay, so we're talking candles, incense, crystals.
Exactly. All of that. You'll also need to create a sigil scroll, which is kind of like a magically charged symbol that represents the spirit. And then you'll consecrate certain objects that you'll use in the ritual. You're trying to create an environment that's like welcoming and energetically potent.
So there's a lot of preparation involved here.
There is. But, we're really just scratching the surface here. The actual rituals and practices involved in spirit sex are much more intricate than we can cover in this, deep dive.
Okay, but I'm definitely intrigued. Tell me more. Okay, so we've chosen our spirit, we have built our shrine, we've got our candles and incense. It's like we're getting ready for a date, but with a spirit.
It is a bit like that.
So what else should we do to prepare?
Preparation is really key when you're working with spirits. You want to be in the right mindset, have your energy aligned.
So how do you do that?
Well, there are a few things you can do. Mental and physical cleansing is important. Some people fast, some people abstain from certain foods.
So no coffee or donuts before a spirit summoning?
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Meditation is also really helpful.
Yeah, to clear your head.
Right. You want to be clear-headed and focused.
Got it. So I'm cleansed, I'm focused, I'm in the right headspace. Now what? How do I actually call upon this spirit?
Okay, so this is where we step into the realm of magic.
Ooh, I like it.
The goal here is to create a sacred space within your shrine. And traditionally, this is done by visualizing a magic circle.
A magic circle.
Yeah,
right.
it's like this protective boundary of energy. And then you summon the spirit into its image.
Into the image that you've, created.
Exactly.
Okay. So you've summoned it,
Yeah.
but how do you actually talk to a spirit?
Well, a lot of it is about mental projection.
Mental projection.
Yeah, focusing your thoughts and emotions on the spirit's image, and specifically on the left eye.
The left eye. Why the left eye?
Well, in a lot of magical traditions, the left side of the body is associated with the subconscious, feminine energy receptivity.
Oh, interesting.
So focusing on the left eye helps you connect with the spirit's energy on a deeper level. But, actually seeing or perceiving a spirit, that can be a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what kind of experiences might someone have? What'd that be like?
Well, everyone's different. Some people might just feel, a subtle shift in energy, maybe a tingling sensation. Others might have, really vivid dreams, visions even. Some people even report hearing the spirit's voice.
Wow. A disembodied voice. That's pretty wild.
It can be.
Are there tools or techniques that can help facilitate this communication?
There are. Some alchemists believe that certain substances can actually intensify the spirit's presence, help you connect with it more deeply, like the oil of Lilith.
Okay.
Yeah.
The oil of Lilith. Got it. So we've set the stage. We've called upon our spirit. We've made contact. Let's talk about, the main event, the experience of spirit sex itself.
Let's do it.
A lot of people are probably thinking, okay, is this all just in your head or is there something more to it? What do you say to that?
I would say it's definitely more than just imagination. People who practice spirit sex report having very real physical sensations, even though there's no physical contact.
Okay, so how is that possible?
Well, it depends on how you view the spirit world.
No.
But many traditions believe that spirits can interact with us on an energetic level.
So they have an energy body that can merge with ours.
That's one way to think about it.
So what's it actually like to, make love to a spirit?
Well, it's often described as being more subtle, more ethereal than sex with a physical person. It's not really about a physical climax in the same way. It's more about cultivating a connection.
It's a different kind of intimacy then.
Exactly. You're exploring the energetic and emotional dimensions of sexuality rather than just focusing on the physical.
It sounds like this whole journey from, choosing your spirit to experiencing this really unique form of intimacy, it's a path to self-discovery.
It can be, definitely. And it kind of circles back to that whole idea of God-making that we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's not just about creating a being, but about recognizing the divine spark within yourself.
I love that. It's amazing how a subject that most people consider taboo, something that's only whispered about, can open up such deep, philosophical and spiritual questions. It really has been an incredible journey exploring all of the history, the beliefs, the practices.
It has been.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that, it's all about connecting with a deeper part of ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And for everyone listening, I guess the question is, what will you discover? Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.